Welcome to Last in Line podcast, where we are highlighting, showcasing, and spotlighting great leaders of faith who have overcome adversity, cultivated resilience, and served others in a significant capacity. So settle in and be encouraged by this episode of Last in Line podcast. We are bringing back David Villa to Last in Line podcast. He was on a couple years ago, and as you may remember, David is been down in Tampa, Florida. He's lived down there and married to his wife 30 years. He started what's called IPD agency. They started it from their bedroom, cold calling local car dealerships, developed a company that is they work with over 600 companies annually, United States, Canada. Basically, it's a leading direct marketing firm for the automotive industry. They credit the success of their hard work to really ultimately their faith in Christ, and they've built their life around that as a foundation. They also launched what's called Game Changer, which is basically a subsidiary of IPD's agency marketplace ministry, and which puts God at the forefront of their work. And so that team developed Game Changer platform, which allows believers in the marketplace to connect as one community. They want there to be a resource for people that, Christians in the workplace, Christians that go to the secular workplace, vocational ministry. They want to create a platform where you can be fed and actually get stronger in your spiritual life. They do faith-based blogs. They do interviews, discussions. They created Game Changer podcast. He's written 40 devotional plans on the YouVersion Bible app with over 1.5 million subscribers, which is crazy to me, since I've got 8 devotionals and I don't have near that amount of subscribers. That's pretty remarkable. But they host a Game Changer podcast, and together they've built a team in that automotive industry, and now in the marketplace ministry with Game Changer. So we're talking a lot about faith, of course, but we're going to talk about how to balance, your faith and actually implement that in your secular world. We talk about disciplines, routines, things that can build you spiritually to start your day. Talk about marriage and parenting too, but we're going to dig into just spiritual life and how to grow stronger as men, which is what you guys know to be paramount for us and the next generation. So guys, with that, help me welcome David Villa to Last in Line podcast. Man, David Villa, it's been too long, but welcome back to Last in Line podcast.
Hey man, I'm honored to be back, and love what you're doing, and so happy to come back and chat with you for a little while.
Yeah, as usual, we feel like we're walking right alongside people on social media when we see what they're doing with their family and their job and their mission. And so I don't think there's any rest for the weary, because I never see you in an idle moment. I don't know how old you are, but I don't know how you have the energy of like a 17-year-old, but apparently you do. But I'm glad to have you back, because I want to just dive into a couple areas I think the Lord is leading me in on behalf of my audience. And it's things that you've talked about in the past. And it's just a lot of different things under the sun, but really relevant to today and the last, I would say, 12 months in our world. But before we do that, we're going to have a little fun here. I implemented, since you were here last, something I call a life sentence. Okay. And you are going to complete the sentence for me. All right. And this is from your perspective. This is you talking, and I'm going to give it to you, and you're going to finish it. Here we go. You ready to jump in?
Let's do it.
All right, man. Here we go. Buckle up, audience. All right. My advice to young Christians transitioning into secular corporate America is,
man, have a morning routine with the Lord.
Give me more. Give them a practical routine that works for you.
I mean, if you're going to transition into the secular job world, then, I'm full on marketplace ministry now. So I know the difference. And so if you're in, and I see the culture that we drive, the people that we that we get in here that come in strictly for the culture, that leave money and come in, make money, but they're coming in for the culture. So with that being said, what's out there, I think that you have to walk into the day, man, more than ever, not just a couple little Bible scriptures here and there, but man, get up earlier if you have to and carve out a morning routine with God just to find out, abide with him, find out how he wants to start the day and what he wants to do. And one thing I've learned, all my life in church, Psalms 118:24, right? This is the day the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in. You almost can't go to a church service without hearing that scripture, right? But the 25th verse says, save us today and send prosperity. So it's about blessing that day. So I ask God just to handle today, every day.
Yeah, that's good. Did you always have a solid handle on that, or
No.
what was kind of was the learning curve steep for you early in your career, given that you grew up in church? That doesn't always default into perfect practical practice in what we're talking about. Did you have like an aha moment, or did you just kind of have to figure it out?
Well, no, I did not always do it. It wasn't really I don't think an aha moment. I started, just realizing, because if you don't have a good start to the day, and I've always kind of realized this early on, you really can't finish strong. People always talk about finishing strong. It's like, hey man, finish strong, finish strong. Well, if you don't start fast, it doesn't really matter. Like, perfect example, that's a relay race. You can be the fastest guy at the anchor, but if you're the guy that started the race didn't get out to a fast start, it don't matter. And so no, I didn't always do that. I think just failing over the course of the over years, and just getting to the place where during the middle of the day, frustrating back in the day, even when I was, love the Lord, but there was a time period where I was battling, prescription pills. This is like, a while back early in my career, and I was just, I'd hit the wall, and I turned to those types of things to try to get me to go through it. And, so I just realized that at that point, just started really seeking some mentorship and asking the Lord for some help. And he started showing me, he started asking me, how you starting your morning? Are you starting with me? You're expecting me to come in and bail you out.
Yeah.
And,
I would say too, I think like you mentioned starting fast. We got to create that momentum, right? So that we have some staying power and some gas in the tank, because the day will get you. If you don't, it's coming for you. And the enemy is real too. So we've got to get that armor on early. And I talk about that a lot, almost to probably my audience's nauseum, but it's worth talking about, because I don't think that horse can get dead enough to make us stop beating it, because there is an enemy, and it's almost constant with what he's coming at us with, especially as we start doing more impactful work for the kingdom. Did you? I do a lot of talking about spiritual warfare, and I didn't really plan to go into this, but I do have a question. As you started growing your business, and then you started becoming like gaining a larger footprint in the kingdom with your mission, your ministry, your marketplace ministry, did you notice that you had a bigger target on your back the more good you kind of did for the kingdom?
Yeah. Especially in this last 3 years. And not just with COVID and things like that, but just because there were parts of that we actually kind of broke some records, and but after that, really in the last year and a half, there's been it was really a target of the enemy, because we started to implement God into our workplace, just full on, like became a marketplace ministry, and announced it, talked about it, started going after it, like not just, and then we realized we started feeling, all my leadership team started kind of feeling the toughness of it, and kind of realized that it was a spiritual attack. Enemy didn't like it. He didn't like what we were doing. And so, but yeah, absolutely. I've always been of the persuasion that, if the enemy is not coming after you, then, are you really doing anything for the kingdom? So, but, oh, absolutely, man. You get a target on your back when you do that. But here's the thing, God is, God is the victor on that. And, and the enemy already lost that battle, but yeah,
That's
absolutely. 100%.
yeah. Yeah. Well, I know we experience they say you hit another level spiritually, you experience another devil, and that's true. If you're not moving in the direction of advancing the kingdom, then you're not a threat to him. So that's a good point. If you're not feeling the heat, man, maybe you need to turn up the fire on your mission. All right, let's go number 2 here. I
Okay.
believe the biggest void in men today is
Biggest void in men today. I think, and I know this is going to sound, a little bit cliche from like some of the things the Promise Keepers and different things that taught us over the last, couple of decades, but real transparency and, with other men. Iron sharpens iron. And I don't, and I mean, and to be honest with you, I mean, I bought into this to a degree for a long time, but in the last year, since I started leading a men's business small group, I mean, I've done a lot of things, a lot of groups, a lot of teaching, a lot of all that. But in a small group, there's 46 guys in there now, so it's not that small. But man, it gets raw, it gets real in there, and these are business guys. And here's what's crazy: where I started it thinking, about a year and a half ago, thinking that, hey, we're going to come in, we're going to like talk about marketplace and talk. We do, but man, you'd be amazed how much in that business group we're talking about, not quitting, hey, my marriage is tough, or this is happening, or hey, I'm struggling with this. And so I think that just being real, we do these things in the beginning of our meeting every week called Wars and Wins. So we'll go around the room. We have to hurry now because we got, 40 guys in there. Hey guys, give me your war, give me your win. And they just go through it, boom, boom. Well, I said something this past week. I said, you know what? Let's get past. I said, let's go through our wars and wins, and let's go through the lesson, and let's open up 15 minutes at the end. Let's discuss the real wars. I said, because what happens is you give us the highlight reel, but then we go through a lesson, and then we realize there's some wars that we're not sharing with each other.
mm-hmm.
And so I think that just being real, opening up and say, man, I'm struggling with this.
Mm-hmm.
This is a safe place, and I'm going through this situation right now. And it could be anything from, marriage, business, to relationship, to lust, to whatever
Yep.
it is. And so I think that's the key, because the reality is you get into a group or around some folks that aren't there to judge you. You're going to probably find that someone's been through it, going through it, and understands it.
Well, okay. So of those 40 to 50 guys, would you say you had a foundational relationship to begin with most of them to maybe create that safe environment? Because I know that's a struggle, because when you talk about it, all guys that I know would love to have that, right? They would love to have maybe not 40, but even 4 would be a win.
Right.
How did you get that buy-in early on? Did you already have an established kind of relationship from a faith standpoint, spiritually, professionally?
So, yeah, great question. So let me back up a second, qualify. So no, I don't. Matter of fact, some of those guys that are in there, I have, I have talked to 5 minutes, even now
Mm,
that they're in there. Like, in other words, we'll just see each other in passing, going in and out. Now others in there, I've got, I
mhm,
knew a few of them I knew in there. Most of them, it's a pretty good sized church, but most of them I didn't know at all going into it. But and then many of them have reached out after. So let me kind of qualify it. So no, we didn't, but it quickly became a place where you could share some sort of deal, because there's
mhm.
a lot of people that were in there. And it was just one of these things where in this particular group, it was people just didn't judge. They were there to really, it just was the right group of guys.
Okay.
But, and then, there's a lot of that sharing also, though, did take place to where there's like guys that maybe reached out one-on-one, or maybe there was some time where a couple of us went, grabbed some coffee and somebody shared something a little deeper. So a lot of that did spin out of that meeting. But,
Mhm.
yeah, but, but there's a lot of that vulnerability that was going on right there too. And even some of it, man, to be honest, it wasn't just like the lust and the typical things that guys, go through, every man's battle. Right. But
Yeah.
But there were some business things, some things at work, some things with employees, some financial situations, people legitimately wanting to quit. Like I'm done
Mhm.
with this. I mean, there were guys that were at the end of their ropes in some ways, so
Yeah.
there's just a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, I didn't, I guess, plan to go down that road, but I'm glad you brought the group up because I mean, it's needed. That's the whole reason I'm talking about it, because obviously there is a void almost everywhere you look for guys to really kind of get down below the surface. And it's a common theme on guests I have on the show is, the scripture, Proverbs 27:17, that the iron sharpens iron, but just huddles, groups of guys that do things together, and then that opens the door and builds trust. But you said you had a comfortable, safe environment immediately, and guys kind of felt comfortable, and I think that's great, man. Guys need a safe refuge to do that with, to not feel by themselves. All right, and we hadn't even gotten into the main meat of this, so guys, you're in for a treat. I'm glad David came back to the show. All right, here's the last life sentence for you.
Okay.
Early in my marriage, I wish I would have.
I wish I would have listened to my wife more and when it came to business. And secondly, I wish I would have prioritized my family more early on in my marriage.
I had that conversation with somebody. I don't want to cut you off, but I'm going to let you keep going. But I did have that conversation with someone a few weeks back, and I think it was a guest on the show. Is now in the season they're in, they're like taking a breath and enjoying life, smelling the roses, and they want to be able to soak it all in. But it's kind of it's a dichotomy. In order to get to that point of comfort and safety and peace financially and just security, you have to run really fast early on, and then you neglect the roses. Like, it's just kind of a double-edged sword. Is that kind of what you're feeling like?
Yeah. I mean, I think that the difference now, and this is interesting because I do in this small group, and then I also do, which happens a lot more probably in this, but I do some mastermind mentoring groups with guys that are in businesses. They actually pay for it. So there's like more time. We do a lot of other coaching and stuff. But there's a lot of young guys in there that all kind of approach me. And then we offered this, but they're doing it differently. So I don't think you have to do it that way, even to build a business and to go, but it will happen if you don't, if you're that person, which you're probably going to be a driver, if you're out there doing that, and it will happen unless you have somebody that's going to help you, even as a believer, and so I think that that's a responsibility of mine to pour in. I didn't have anybody early on to really guide me in that. I had, my father wasn't saved at that time. He is now, but he was an entrepreneur. He was running hard, and I had that to model by. And so but 100%, in putting my family first. Now, by God's grace, my kids have all come out. They're serving God. My two older kids are the ones that one of them owns a business, and one of them is they're serving God, their ministry, and my youngest is a worship director. And so God's, man, grace there. But and then also the other thing about listening to my wife more in business, just including her, because we could have gotten further faster on that as well. I think both of those things will go hand in hand. It's like I tried to do both of those things by myself. I didn't have anybody mentoring me. I think it's having a mentor at all times. I mean, different things. I have mentors now, people now in my life, different areas, and having somebody that can help you hold accountable, and then having someone that, if you're married, having that person that's like listening to him as a partner. Man, I could have got further faster on both of those things.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. I appreciate it, because there's somebody that might be in that exact scenario where they're at a fork in the road, and they're going to, it doesn't necessarily have to be mutually exclusive. Like you said, it's not like I want to chase the security and the resources to build that wealth, and I'm going to have to neglect some things first to do that. Like, it doesn't have to be that way. So it's good to hear you say that. All right. Before we get into what we talked about, the transition, the fear and uncertainty, and then the obedience and expectation, I wanted to ask, so you do coaching, do a lot of marketing, and specifically from what I remember, I think in the automotive industry, dealerships, those kinds of things, and just building brands, building marketing teams, sales, training salespeople. What if I wanted to have you come speak to a company? If I'm a CEO or I'm a director of marketing and I want to get the salespeople going this year and we got a guy coming in, why would I want them to buy into the idea of David Villa coming to speak to my sales team?
I mean, I don't speak that. I mean, I'm very specific these days on where I go. To be honest with you, there was a time where I chased that. I don't chase that as much. I do get a lot of invitations and I do the things, but it's very strategic, meaning,
Sure.
and the reason is it has nothing to do with money, things like that. It has to do with, just really the purpose behind it. So I think that, and I do all of those things you talked about in various ways. So, I mean, first of all, I preach, so I preach and I do a lot of things with preaching and tradition
Okay.
with marketplace, preach for, 30 years almost, but, and then as far as sales training, I do a lot of that.
Yeah.
I think that, I feel like that, if why somebody would tap into what I'm doing on any of those levels is, I'm very, very passionate about what I do. And then if this is something that we agree on, and then, and there's a reason, and all of a sudden that reason resonates with me, and then I pray about it and we all feel it's a good thing, then I feel like I'm going to come in and I'm going to pour my heart out, to how many ever people are there. It doesn't really matter to me.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if I'm in, I'm passionate about it and I believe in it. And, I want to leave wherever I'm at just better, with something. I want to deposit and invest. That's my purpose, to do that. I want to see people change for the better.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. And I said it before we recorded. I think I said, you've got more energy than I do for sure. And you got the energy of, it seems like a teenager sometimes, and it's crazy to watch. But yeah, I could see you being very passionate. I've watched you just from afar with your teams and things, and it's contagious, I'm sure. So that's a good thing that you're bringing to the table. As we talk about transition, I think that's a big deal. I've got a son, a senior in high school, who's getting ready to graduate and go off to college, most likely. And had a couple sons, start new careers out of college. One just graduated college this summer, and he's a youth pastor at our church. So I've just kind of had it a little bit on my heart, this deal of transition.
Yeah.
Tell me about a time in your life, I guess, where you maybe had a significant transition, whether it be you just pivoted completely in a career direction, maybe your ministry took a leap forward, or maybe a lateral leap where you had to kind of take a pause and realize, hey, let me just rest in this season and see what God's trying to say to me. Did you have anything like that's come up where you learned a lot?
Yeah. I mean, probably many, but I mean, several years when I transitioned, the initial transition of, trying to that identity crisis of, being called to traditional ministry, and that identity back and forth with business and how that was going to work before, God sorted all of that out. But I think in the most recent years, like the last couple of years, the transition into marketplace ministry, because we were a successful company, Christians that owned the company, everybody knew we were Christians. I mean, God was blessing us. But when he really showed me the purpose of like how these things were coming together, the ministry and the business were going to just meet, and there was a purpose for that, and he was going to show me how to do it, because I didn't know how. And even though there's some resources out there, there's some folks, it's not unheard of, but there's not really a blueprint per se for it, so other than the Bible, right? And so that transition, because what that transition did was the way I'd always done it. I was doing something right. I was ethical, and we were above board, and we were making money and being blessed. We were givers and all that. But the way I did it, and then the markets changed, and then God began to say, I want to bring this in this deliberate shift, and I want you to deliberately begin to declare this as a marketplace ministry, then all of these things together, what that requires you to do is kind of change almost what you were doing in a sense. Well, God wanted me to change it. There was a blueprint, but then me taking my hands off the wheel and not trying to control it, not trying to do it the way I've always done it. And that's hard. That's a transition to me. And you mentioned like backing off or slowing down. I had to like back off, and I had to like, wait a lot. And it was kind of like working out, it's like you're doing something good or you're accomplishing something, but it hurts, and you're tearing your muscles, and, things are happening, but it feels like you're you're going backward in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's probably the most recent. And that was a hard transition because the enemy's over here in your ear. You know what he does. He knows there's a transition, but he's over here lying to you and telling you all the things, that are fear-based and uncertainty. And then, so you have this dichotomy going on during that time.
Yeah.
That was the most recent, transition,
Yeah. I wonder what do you feel like most people struggle with during that transition season? Like, do you feel like it's a doubt of, is this a God move, or is, because a lot of people will think, okay, if it's smooth, then it's God. If there's struggle and opposition, then it's not. And we know that's not true. So what do you feel like most people struggle with? Just the actual faith it takes to leap forward into that said destiny they feel God's calling them to, or making heads or tails of whether or not it really is God?
Yeah, 100%. So it's something, when you were asking that question, this popped in my mind, the story in the Bible of Peter walking on water. So because it is 100% the doubt. It's doubt. It's messaging. So you have the message, the word, and you have basically the enemy. He doesn't have any power or authority to touch your life, right? You're covered by the blood,
right.
But he has but it's all words. It's a message. So you have the message and then the message. And so if you think about it, when God calls you to do something, use Peter. When Jesus calls him out of the boat, it's always something that you can't do on your own. I mean, it always is, right? I mean, if you have a vision, and it's a God vision, there's always an element of it that you can't do it on your own, but it's God, and you feel charged about it, and you're pumped about it. But then you step out to do it, and then you run into the fact that you're human, and then it's a God thing. So Peter's stepping out of the boat, right? He's going, and then here God's moving, and he's walking where natural men sink. And then all of a sudden there's the words, there's the waves, there's the rain, there's the wind, and it's speaking to him, and then because of that process, and because of the weight, and because of the you're constantly struggling to take control. Boom, you give into those voices sometimes. And so I think that's the biggest thing. It's like the delay, the wrestling, and it's always about I think it's always about giving. It's always about control with me,
Yeah.
Even if I'm not conscious of it being control, it's always about like,
Yeah.
I want to know the outcome. I want to know what tomorrow is. I want to know how this is going to work. How are you going to do that, God? How it's going to work out,
Yeah.
And sometimes that's not, he's not going to give you those answers.
No, I mean, rarely up front do you get the answers to the test. And I would say too, in whoever's in that moment where they might be kind of at that crossroads, I feel like once we're bought in to the idea that it is for sure God, like once and I'm sure you went to there's wisdom in the multitude of counselors, right? I'm sure you went to like-minded counsel, and I'm sure you prayed, and obviously your wife had a witness on the direction as well. And like, if we're listening to those people and we're convinced, right, I think it's easier to deal with those messages, especially the lie message, because we already know, look, no, I know the finish line's over here. I know this is the direction. This is the right way. And the opposition don't care because I know it's still God. Opposition don't care. Doubt don't care. Fear don't care because I know this is the way. So I guess, and I know everybody's different, but did you, before you made that significant transition, or even in another instance, did you know that you knew that it was God, and did that make it easier?
Yeah. In this specific thing, yeah, and it made it made it
Digestible.
yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know if easier was right, but it
Right.
made it, when it's a God thing, he lights that fire on
Mm-hmm.
the inside of you, I mean, it's one of those things where even if you get to the place where you just, you're close to quit, you want to turn back, you think, you
Mm-hmm.
can't make it. It's like something kicks in, right? And that's the God factor in it. But it made it where he always wins. He always, God
Mm-hmm.
always is gonna, if he has your heart, he's always gonna bring you back around to him. And it's just how quick are we gonna get there? How much pain are we gonna cause ourselves? How many times are we gonna go around this mountain? And so I
Mm-hmm.
think it made it definitely, it made it where you can make it. And I'll tell you this, God gave me the word that came out of that season for me was blueprint. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that was one of the Bible plans that we wrote during that season. Blueprint, like, cause we were praying, and then all of a sudden, one of the days I was praying, and God put the word blueprint in my heart, and so I started specifically praying for a blueprint, and He gave it. He laid it out. He gave it to me.
Yeah.
It didn't just come, but it.
I mean, yeah, I think once you're convinced that he's on it or in it, then you can, like we said, digest. We can navigate when it gets choppy, and the wind starts blowing. And Peter knew, because the Lord was right in front of him. So he still just kind of, he wasn't sure, even though the Lord was right there. Yeah, I'm gonna have to check that one out, and I might have already read it, but might have been a while. But I did check out. Good transition, great segue. Thank you for that. We didn't plan it, but I did read one of your I think devotionals talking about uncertainty, and I kind of lumped that right in with fear, because one breeds the other, I think. And it's the yin and yang factor, and chicken or the egg. I don't know which breeds which, but I know uncertainty and the fear of the unknown is a thing. So I mean, right now we live in a time, as a world goes, and just interaction with other countries, and we're not going to talk politics, but just uncertainties all over the place, right? Economy, those kinds of things, leadership. What How do you balance, I guess, when you talk about things around distractions, how do you balance being informed and then maybe being kind of on guard for the fear mongering that might be out there, and getting ourselves in that current of secular perspective of fear, and the work, and the end times are here, but I'm just saying, like, how do we draw the line between being informed and then being so fearful based on what's going on around us?
Yeah, I mean, that's good. I mean, I guard what I put in,
Mm-hmm.
and what I'm listening to. I love, by my human side of
Mm-hmm.
me loves the news, like the,
Mm-hmm.
Fox News or this and that. I like watching that kind of stuff. I can get into a rabbit trail of that. I did,
Mm-hmm.
I stopped a couple of years ago doing it, but I mean, I was like, I was watching it because, it was entertaining and it just interested me. My wife would fall asleep. I'd sit there and watch it for 2 hours. And, so I just remember at one point, 2, 3 years ago, cutting it off. And, so I'm very specific on what I put in. I mean, I'm informed. I'll get notifications on my phone. I'll look at it,
Sure.
but I, I just am careful on some of the voices, whether, no matter what side of the fence that person's on, just some of the voices that, because both sides, political, when you look at the media and things of that nature, and the voices, they're looking to get, it's clickbait, right?
Yeah.
They're in money business. I mean, and they're in the fear mongering business, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to take something and they're going to stir it up to the most. And it's just the way it is. They want to make money. And so, I there's voices I listen, and there's some voices I listen to, especially in the season recently. I started tapping into, my wife and I both, to several voices that in the last month, since like the Israel and things like that,
Yeah.
just listening to voices, that I trusted, voices that maybe some I haven't listened to in a while, but they were very specific on these types of things that were going on. And then, and I informed myself if I, went back through and I listened and then of course, then praying, taking that and praying in God, hey, what are you saying to me on this, and, cause we got to live, right? We have to live and we have to win a world to the Lord. There's no reason to fear because we know what side of this thing we're on. And if we preach my whole life, we preach, right, Jesus is coming back and, our eternity's in heaven and, hey, listen, there's a heaven and a hell. God's going to, if all these things are real, which they are, how does something wrap up without being messy? How does something wrap up without wrapping up?
Yeah.
Eventually there's going to be a generation on the earth where they're the ones that are here when it wraps up. And, so I think that's the key, just what are you listening to? Because the enemy, I think there's a lot of fear out there and uncertainty today. And, but I'll say this, I don't know if you follow Jensen Franklin or not. He just had a revival that lasted 12 days at his church. Perry Stone, who does a lot of, end time kind of thing. He came and did something, but it was just what happened. I think in this situation is that people turn to God. I guess what I'm saying, I think they have a tendency that uncertainty can cause that person that has that seed to turn to God. And I think that, that's a good thing.
It's a good thing. Yeah, it is. And I've gotten sucked into that vacuum too. And it's easy, but I think to the listener, maybe as a safeguard and maybe some guardrails and boundaries that you can incorporate within your spirit is like, check out the latest headline, the update on a situation that might be significant wherever it is. But once you start feeling yourself getting sort of that toxicity and that, I don't know, you can almost feel that evil penetrate you. You know what I mean? Your spirit, you can I think to me, that's a trigger. That's a red flag to go, all right, let's cut this off. That's not life-giving. I got it. Yes, I know where we stand there, but let me go kind of water this and refresh myself in the word or in prayer and just ask for that kind of wisdom.
Well, Timothy says he's not giving us a spirit of fear, but a power, love, and a sound mind. And so, if you find yourself, here's a good litmus test. If it causes fear, it's not God, bringing that. It's not God, because he's not going to inform you to make you fearful, word, his word's not designed to make us fearful in a negative fear way, a fear or awe of God. But so I'm you have to just I think you have to guard yourself on that. We got to be informed. But I'll say one thing is if that Bible plane you're talking about, the uncertainty in times of certainty or certainty in the times of uncertainty.
Yeah.
One thing I believe I said in there was that kind of sums it up too. I don't know what the future holds, but I know who holds the future. And that was in that plan. I don't know what the future holds, but I know who holds the future. We know what the future is based on what the word said, but we don't know how that's going to unfold exactly.
Yeah.
And the smartest, theologian on the planet doesn't, know exactly. The Bible says that Jesus doesn't even know the day he's going to return, just God the Father. It's like Jesus doesn't even know. He's probably ready right now, and whenever God says go. So anyway, but
that's good, man. Well, another quote that I actually wrote down here from I think it was from that plan was you said it's time that we evict uncertainty and make way for certainty. Negativity has overstayed its welcome and positivity is moving back in. So yeah, what I'm hearing you say is we own our thoughts. I know that's biblical. We take our thoughts captive, or we can. We've been given the choice whether to choose life or death, blessing or cursing. It's on us, right? Like you said perfectly earlier, the devil has no authority. He's got no final say. He's got a loud voice, and he knows a lot of tactics to try to tempt us. But ultimately, we make the choice. We can take our thought captive and make it obedient to Christ. So I love that quote, and there were a bunch of others in there, but that one stood out to me because it says, regardless of uncertainty, regardless of the fear that might be out there knocking on our door, we have the choice on what we believe, truth or lie. And so that's ultimately it. So yeah, I wonder if you had any, as far as managing mindset, because in the work you do, marketing, brand creation, promotion, sales, training. You gotta create a mindset, right? Especially if you come into an environment that's been a little bit unhealthy in that regard, and you've got to maybe get a paradigm shift going and change a mindset. Do you have some things that apply not only in the work you do vocationally, but maybe in our lives just as people and trying to be Christians, trying to advance a kingdom, managing mindset? You got any technique or mechanics maybe that are mainstays for you?
Yeah, you know, I'll do something for your audience too. You know, I mean, I know everyone's not, you know, going to be in sales, but if they're in business, I think that anybody that's in business is in, you know,
Sure.
probably a form of sales. We have a platform called Faith-Based Selling. It's faithbasedselling.com. And I'll give anybody that, you know, is listening, anybody that you know, that wants it, I'll give them a free year subscription to it. No strings
Whoa.
attached. Yeah, they can have a free, you know,
Whoa.
'cause I want to bless people. And then we have a faith-based selling devotional. I'll give one to everybody, and we'll send it out. I gave a bunch of them away,
Wow.
and a couple months ago, and it's about 42 or 43 pages in there. We wrote it. So with regards to the sales, we teach faith-based selling. Not something I've taught for my whole career. I've sold, but you know, I look back over the success I've had, and yeah, I'm a good salesperson and I know the strategies and what have you. But what really has made me successful is the fact that I've implemented my faith, and I've, you know, because, you know, if not, I probably would have quit and gave up and so forth. That's what causes you to keep going when things get tough. So we've implemented courses on that. So, and then we have some leadership, like Leader Be Lunch Academy, things like that we do. Our Game Changer, our marketplace ministry. We do tons of like things in there, Game Changer mentoring. So we have a ton of things, but I'd say that we just sincerely, man, implement faith into everything, implement the word of God, I should say, into everything. And and that's, you know, that's the strategies for mindset. And what you mentioned, but the mindset comes back to what you mentioned a minute ago, because we always are talking about, I'm real big on, like, you know, I won't mention, but you're secular people that are saying, hey, no negativity allowed, no, can't be negative or whatever. And I get that, but it's easier said than done, because you can't say no negativity, which means you're speaking it, if your thoughts are messed up. So that it starts here. That's the battleground. And so the word of God in Philippians, right? It said it, you mentioned it a minute ago, think on these things. So you can think on these things of the world, or you could think on the word of God. And so sometimes it's just like starting there, so that it comes out of your mouth and comes out of your actions.
Yeah. And I'm going to hold you to that. I think
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
might regret offering that, but no, faith-based, one word or hyphenated, or
Yeah,
faithbasedselling.com.
yeah, faith-based
All
selling,
one.
one word.
Okay. All right. I'm going to put that in the show notes. No, you're right on, man. I mean, you mentioned working out earlier, and I do a fair share of that. And it's like when you talk about people are like, no negativity. You can't have any negativity. No, you know, not let any of that in. I mean, that's like saying I want to grow, you know, I want to add 20 pounds to my bench press, but I don't want any resistance
Right.
in the process. Like that's what it is resistance. Like we need to be able to overcome. It's not just, you know, remove the Twinkies from the cabinet. It's the Twinkies are there and I can overcome that. Like I don't need that. And so the negativity is going to be there, man. If we try to just bury ourselves and put blinders on, man, we're going to miss out on some of that
It's not
stuff,
like
just trying to shield
taking the
ourselves.
Twinkies out of the cabinet. It's like, stop going to the grocery store and replacing them.
There you
Right.
go. That's right. That's right. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know that I could be strong enough, but
Yeah.
anyway, yeah. So I appreciate that. All right, man, as we start talking, kind of trying to land the plane here, this has been good stuff. And I realize I've been kind of all over the map, but man,
Oh,
I
that's
feel
good.
like, there's people that these are some big like topics that are out there kind of floating around the manosphere, which is probably a negative term nowadays. But, when you talk about obedience and expectation, and I put those together, and I kind of want to get your take on this because I had never thought of it from this perspective until I'm sitting down today. I'm in my job. I'm in medical sales, and so I'm kind of waiting on talking to a doc, and you know, and selling and doing my thing. And I'm thinking about our conversation today that I'm going to have with you, and I'm like, I wonder if. And so I want you to either tell me this is a hot take or tell me this is a cool, lukewarm at best take, and maybe shine some light on it. But Does our level of obedience reflect our level of expectation in a way? Are those related?
Obedience and expectation.
Let me give you context because I'm putting you on the spot here. But so if I have a short-sighted level of expectation, right? And I'm just kind of in the moment, living for now, instant gratification. Is that's going to affect to the degree that I'm obedient, correct? Like to the word, to a higher standard. That's where I'm going.
Yeah, absolutely. Because 100%. I mean, because the God I think the biggest thing is the biggest reason is God doesn't do anything small. I mean, he works in the small. I mean, he works in the small and the big things, but he's a big God. And, the things he wants with regards to purpose are something significant. So I think that if my expectations are just for instant, something instant gratification, then I'm not really having the mind of Christ. Because if I have the mind of Christ, then I'm not looking at when it's going to happen. I'm looking at, hey, what's your will, God? And again, God, so so I think, because if I can get it really quick, then is it really God? Is it really a God thing? Am I really being obedient? And, then you're making me think of like obedience is better than sacrifice, because sometimes we'll even say, well, yeah, but I sacrificed to do that, or that was, but that's still not obedience,
Sure.
But obedience is hard because it's laying down like your will, and everything that God's ever put in front of me as a purpose or a vision or like a goal or something that he's put there has been awesome looking. And then as I start to go for it, number one, always try to implement my own will in there, and because it's never just been perfectly through, always have done that. So it's always taken, longer because of me. But then when I get there, it's never been the way I would have chose. And it's always better than I thought it was going to be.
I mean, that's incredible. Because look, obedience requires faith. Like if my faith is in the tank, I'm less likely to continue on the path of obedience, right? I'm less likely, because then I'm going to start being like, okay, I'm impatient. I'm going to take the reins. I'm take control of this, because then I can see it, feel it, touch it, smell. And obedience is attached to the faith in the bigger picture. Now, on the other side of the coin, I'll ask you, does inflated, because we said God's big, right? God can do big stuff. And you said earlier, the dream, if it's bigger than you, chances are it is God. Like if you can do it on your own, it might not be God. Like, what I mean? So inflated expectations, I wonder, when we as people have inflated expectations of either ourselves, other people, a mission, what we think is our purpose. Maybe we think we're way up here and this is what we're supposed to be doing, but maybe God's plan is like more down here. Are we more likely to quit the more inflated our expectations? Because we got a lot of guys out there quitting right now, just quitting, you fill in the blank. So is that attached to inflated expectations or just lack of resilience?
I think that's attached to obedience as well. If you think about it, because typically I'm thinking of like, when I hear like inflated, I'm trying to think of something, man, quick off my, like like excess water, like excess water or something, or excess, it's gonna sound really bad. Gas, excess.
Sure.
In other words, you're inflated, but it's not usable. It's waste. So if you think about it, then, I'm puffed up in the head. That's probably what I want. That's probably going to serve my ego. It's probably really going to be more fleshly kind of thing. Good. And so I think that in itself is also tied to obedience, because it's not that God didn't give you the ambition or give you the, and want to do great things with you. He gifted you. He gave you that gift and talent, but it's always about where the heart is. And, I've been there too. I've been there where, I thought more of myself, but usually it's tied in a lot of times where, to me, it's always tied into probably more your character not being ready for where God wants to take you as well. and usually the character flaws are some of those things that kind of make it out of bounds as well. And I think that I think there's some unrealistic expectation, but I think a lot of that too, like maybe some of the guys that are quitting and things like that. I think a lot of those things could also be tied to someone just not really truly being a mentor in their life, like a true somebody they put accountability in and said, hey, you've got some accountability over my life. And and like a fathering, like a father in the spirit or something, I think that's so important, because somebody's got to be able to tell you the truth, so you don't quit,
Yeah. Right. No, I agree. And I guess another kind of a part B to that is, in my mind, I'm thinking maybe, yes, we want to dream big, right? Because then we want God to step in and show off on our behalf, and we can point to him, right? Because a big dream, that's fine. That's good to have those. But I think sometimes we think we're going to go from 0 to 60, right? Like we're going to get from 0 to big dream in the time frame we think it should happen. And so that I think between the inflated expectations of maybe I'm not supposed to be, I'll just use me as an, I'm not supposed to be a Joe Rogan. All right. I have a podcast, but I'm no Joe Rogan as far as size goes of podcasts. For me to try to expect that that's where I should be or come close to that is unrealistic, and it's inflated. So therefore, the fact that and I'm just using an extreme example because I obviously don't think that I'm going to get there, but I, in my mind, if I'm thinking that, am more likely to quit podcasting because I'm not even in the same universe as Joe Rogan, right? So do we inflate those expectations and think, oh, well, if God's big, he can do that. Maybe that's not God's plan for me, right? Maybe it's reaching the group that I'm reaching and to stay faithful in that. I don't know. Is that, am I crazy?
No. I think it, I think that it's not looking at maybe patting on ourselves after someone, like a comparison trap. Maybe it kind of even starts there, because the reality is, you never really know what God's going to do. But I think a lot of it has to do with being content in what he's called you into, and just being faithful in it. I know that in my experience, it's not that it didn't happen. Some of the things that I thought were going to happen 20 years ago. And I looked at ministry. I mean, I visualized certain things, certain size, certain crowds, certain this, and some of those things have happened, but they happened differently. And it just took me a long time to wrestle with me, me, like in this identity crisis, and so I think that if, when we settle down and we just realize that, hey, God's gifted me here, he called me here, and and being faithful in the few, then the thing about it is God promotes humility, and I really believe it, man. And so I and I think that things can happen that could be, they could blow our mind on it, but so I think that sometimes people, sometimes people pattern themselves maybe right off the gate a certain way, I can give you examples of people I know that have done certain things, and it was really and they quit very early on because their expectations, I think, were off base from the very get-go, maybe inflated expectations, but also like unrealistic expectations, but they were also shooting, I think, for that versus God. And then, and you're aiming at the wrong thing. I'm not even sure Joe Rogan aimed for maybe what he did.
Sure.
I think he just did it. And then, things happen. Usually it's, connections and things like that.
That was probably a bad example, because I know I don't know that faith is in the equation there with his growth model. But no, I hear you. And comparison is a trap sometimes, but it's also, I mean, we always want to see kind of what's our yardstick, right? I mean, like spaces, like I want to know what so-and-so, so I can kind of refine and get here. And yeah, I'm not them, but I think there's a healthy comparison. But I also wonder too, because guys are quitting because they think, well, I'm not here where I'm supposed to be, where I think I'm supposed to be today. So maybe this isn't my thing. This isn't God or whatever. They're not seeking God. Like you said, they're wrestling with them instead of wrestling with what God wants for them, not wrestling with it, but discerning what he wants. And I worry about, okay, let's say I'm not overinflating my expectations, but then is the other extreme, I'm complacently underachieving, right? So there's this fine line, and I know that's not what you're saying either, but yeah, I think it's good information. I think it's obedience and expectation, I think, go hand in hand, and I don't guess I've ever thought of it that way till today. But yeah, obedience does, would you say it's not sacrifice, or sacrifice is not obedience? I think that's good.
Yeah, the word of God says obedience is better than sacrifice.
Yeah.
So we think sacrificing is the key, but it's really obedience.
Yeah. Yeah. Sacrifice seems to me more like transactional, and then obedience is more of a long-term contractual type deal, long game. Well, man, yeah. Do you have any kind of, as we put a bow on this, do you have any parting shots, maybe parting shots of wisdom, encouragement for the guys that are out there that are sort of teetering? I know your message is never quit, but maybe something for the guys out there that feel maybe they're in a rut right now.
Yeah. If you're in a rut, I'd say I've been there. And, I notice when I'm in a rut, the thing I try to do is I got myself in it over a period of time with some stinking thinking typically. And, if you're in a rut and you're listening, well, you're not going to just be able to leap out. You got to start climbing out. And, I think there's an old story where like a donkey fell into a hole or whatever, and the donkey tried to climb out, and realized it couldn't get out and just got discouraged. And then as it climbed, dirt would fall and then would just slide right back down. And then as it continued to climb, dirt continued to fall. And it realized that if it just kept stepping on top of the dirt, eventually that donkey got out of the hole. And so, I think that just start climbing, and then the grace of God comes in, helps you. And he's there to help, man. He's not there to hurt. And Romans 8:28, all things work together for the good to them that love God, to them that are the called according to his purpose. And so I would just encourage you to keep going.
Yeah, that's good. And if I'm not mistaken, you use that verse in your very first episode of the Game Changer podcast. So that might be your life verse. I was doing a little research today, and I listened to the first episode. I'd never listened to the first one, and you were talking, and that verse came up. So maybe there's a reason I'm supposed to hear that one. All right, man. Well, I appreciate it. We're going to put all your contact stuff in the show notes. We're going to put the faithbasedselling.com in there, and see if we can't get some guys better at selling and the mindset, the winning mindset. But David, it's been great having you back. He's been David Villa. We've been Last in Line. Be blessed.